All right. Thank you so much, Niels, for your time. And I'm so happy just by seeing you right now because I learned a lot from you, from your workshops. And I've been following you, following your books, and even sharing your books. So, the question I have in my Niels right now, and this is actually a question that ordinary people who are trying to be leaders are asking me in the advent of too much technology, AI, agentic AI, predictive AI, blockchain, all of those stuff. How can you inspire teams, Niels, to embrace change in the advent of those things that I mentioned? Because for them, it is the fear of probably losing their job. So, how do we inspire them to have a better mindset to embrace change and probably reinvent themselves?
Wow, that's a complex question. So I'm glad we've got a bit of time. Thank
Yes.
you for asking. I totally understand why so many of your clients and people out there who are listening are scared of AI. And the reality is, if we were to break that question down, because there's kind of three things I'm hearing. One is, how do we inspire people to change? The other one that we're kind of hearing is, how do we help them deal with the fear of change? And how do we then also help them with embracing change while making sure that they understand that there's some potential growth or reward at the end of that? So there's kind of a few components in there. And I think what most leaders do wrong, so let's start with what most leaders probably do wrong, is that they try and do the carrot or the stick. You know,
Mm.
you have to do this or you're out, or we're going to give you extra bonuses if you embrace this. But the reality is that if someone has a story in their head, and from a behavioral perspective, we call this a narrative. So everyone has a narrative about whether it's a new technology, whether it's about a new strategy that we need to do. And we need to understand that their conversation in their head, their narrative, their story is likely to be very different to what ours is or what our CEO or what our organization is having. And unless we can help to change their narrative, their story, we're going to be saying this and their story is going to be saying that. So it will work against us unless we can start to work out what is their story versus what we think we want them to do.
Mhm.
And one of the things that comes to my mind, Riley, when I think of this straight away is the concept, and I learnt this from my early days in copywriting. And there is a saying that some people use, which is join the conversation that's already
Mm.
happening here. So my conversation might be, let's use AI as an example. My conversation might be, AI is going to take my job. AI is going to, mean that I only get to do the really crappy or the painful tasks. AI means that my salary is going to go down and everything else. So what we need to do, if let's say we want to introduce AI and we're saying this is why we need to embrace AI, and they've got that conversation going on in their head, we need to join it in that right way. So we could do
Mm.
that just from a conversation. We could say, so guys, so team, a lot of us right now are probably worrying that AI is going to take their jobs. And I know it in the media, left, right, and center. We see it in our feeds. We're being told of how people are, you know, being replaced or being made redundant by AI. And that just, is totally frightening. But I'd like to invite each and every one of us here today to be open to the possibility that actually AI isn't here to replace us, that AI could actually help us to make us better, to enable us to do the more rewarding activities while using AI to do some of the grunt work, some of the activities that are actually not that fun
Mm-hmm.
and frankly mindless. And if you're open to that idea of a brighter future where we can actually have more time to have better conversations with our clients, how we can have more time to rethink whether our processes are the best ones to get the best result, or to have more time to improve some of those painful things in our day-to-day workflow. If you're open to that, let's look at some ways today of how we can look at reinventing our business or our thinking in our workplace. So does that make sense? So what I'm doing there, I'm layering that in a few different ways. What I'm saying is acknowledging the conversation that's already in their head, and then I'm inviting them into a possibility that maybe there's an alternative way of doing it, and saying, hey, it's not all doom and gloom. In fact, I'm transitioning them from saying this is about replacing you to actually this is about enabling you to become better and to give you the benefits of working on these good things versus the mindless type of work there. So that's kind of a reframing technique that we can use to help people do it. If I was to piggyback on that concept, one of the things that I think is really important is what story do we actually want to tell? So I shared one little story there, but I could also look at who or what organization is out there that might be going through a similar restructure or a similar overhaul or a similar embracing of a new technology, and what was their success story for them. So the more stories I have up my sleeve, the more it starts to change the conversation in their head. Because here's the thing, human beings have been and always will be hardwired to stories. We've been sharing stories since we were cavemen, you know, fighting saber-toothed tigers in the jungles. And stories just make sense. And when we can create more emotion around that story, so how someone's life might have changed, how their frustration disappeared, or how the joy of them making their customer, smile for once, the more we can share those emotion or add more emotional charging to that story, then the more that story is going to land not just in their heart but also in their minds. So what we need to do as leaders is to go, I need to do some research, whether it's asking how we can actually how change and why change is good. And that's sort of one of the things that we need to do from a leadership perspective. So
You know what?
rather than
Yeah. Sorry,
you go.
sorry. I'm sorry, Niels. I just remembered something. This was a story that a former colleague of mine told me. It's not about AI. It's a story that happened in the 90s. He was then a basketball coach of a small school in the US. And all of a sudden, that school hired a coach who is a little bit popular, and therefore he lost his job. But that popular coach, knowing that there might be some hard feelings there, told that former coach, why don't you play? You can still play. And to cut the long story short, Niels, that former coach, who was given a few minutes of playtime, was able to hit a buzzer beating shot that placed that small school into the playoffs. And according to that person, he was a good friend of mine back then. It was the greatest story of his life, being fired as a coach, but being reborn and as what you put it, reinvented as a player.
Yeah,
And he won a
yeah,
very crucial game for the team. Wow,
yeah,
it happens then. There
yeah.
wasn't AI yet at the time.
Right. And what you've just shared there, Ollie, is a classic example of a story. We just process stories so much better there.
Yeah.
So part of part of the leader's job, excuse me, is to look at ways of, finding those stories and sharing them in a way. And the more we keep sharing those stories, so it's not necessarily repeating the same story, it's finding, 5, 10, 20 stories to bring that point across. And they don't always have to be business related, which is
Right,
you just shared a story then,
right.
which was not business at all. And yet it's the concept of it that you can adapt and approach to what you're doing there. So that's kind of like one little component is inspiring people to change the narrative or the story that's going in their head.
Yeah,
To piggyback on that, let's say, for example, if I was working with you one on one as a leader, or with if you worked as me, if you worked with me and you're one of my team members,
yeah,
if I wanted, or if I was working on myself, if I wanted to get myself to change a behavior, whether it's a limiting behavior might be I suck at marketing, or it could be AI, I'm no good at AI, I don't have the tech skills to be good at AI. Then what I could do is I could write out, and sometimes we get our clients to this 100 reasons why I need to change. And that sounds excessive, but the more, again, what we've got to do is stack the conscious mind to help change the unconscious mind to make that shift over there. Because as logical and as, I guess, practical it seems, that yeah, I can see why I need to embrace AI or whatever, this new strategy or whatever it might be, unless we can have enough evidence or enough information that's convincing the subconscious mind to change, we're kind of like going yes on the outside, and the inside's going no way, I'm not going to change at all. So so if I wanted to change my own limiting belief, I literally write out 100 things, like 100 reasons why I need to change and the benefit of those changes. So that's kind of what we're facing as a leader. Not necessarily 100 reasons why they don't need to change going on, but we've got to keep thinking they've got 100 reasons going on saying, I'm not going to change, mate. So we need to kind of stack those things up there. That's sort of one of those things. So that's the sort of the story inspiration part. Another thing that we can do to create change is something that I call co-delegation.
go.
So let's imagine that we need to go about creating a new project in a new way. The problem that most leaders have, not to say all of them, but a lot of leaders still live in, let's call it 1960s sort of management type, where it's hierarchical. I'm up the top, I say, you do, and so on and so on. And the problem with that approach is, one, it's very intensive. It takes a lot of energy for the leader. They're always continually trying to be the puppeteer. And then the people, um, dare I say, beneath them or being told what to do, push back because, oh, I don't want to do that. So if we say, for example, we need to change how we approach our strategy on this project for the next 6 months, if we can set up all of the reasons why we need to change, so that's that inspirational story, and then shift to, okay, so we could all agree that because of the market changes and the conditions and how we've got this technology, we're going to need to change our approach over these next 6 months. What I thought would be a great idea is for all of us to look at what might be some of the actions we need to stop doing. What are some of the actions we should continue that are already working? And what new actions do we need to start in order for us to get this project done in the most economical, efficient, and easiest way that we can live by and come out on top? Um, so what I've done there is I've just shared a strategy that we do with our clients, where we go, what do we need to stop? What do we need to continue? And what do we need to start? So some people call them stop, start, continue maps. And the cool thing is, this could also not just be to actions, it can also relate to behaviors
Right.
or processes. So we like to get people to think of three different areas. What are the processes we need to stop, start, or continue? What are the actions or activities we need to stop, start, and continue? And what are the behaviors we need to stop, start, and continue? And so what we'll do, and I'll just draw this for you so it kind of makes sense.
Great.
And for the viewers out there, what I'm
Yeah.
drawing, basically a kind of, if you can imagine, big arrow. And so the first part there is, what do we need to stop? And I could have different rows in there that relate to actions or processes or behaviors, or it could be on different department levels. So the department level could be marketing, or it could be operations, or it could be in admin. And I could say, what do we need to stop across those different areas? Or if it's project based, again, we might go, what are those activities we need to stop? What are those processes we need to stop? What do we, so on. And once we've got them down, so here's the thing is, how do we get them down? And this is where we call this co-delegation or co-strategizing, is we
Okay.
give everyone a post-it note, a pile of post-it notes. So that way they're thinking on themselves. So Rolly, you've got a pile of post-it notes. I've got a pile of post-it notes. And we go, okay, guys, what do you think are some of those activities or processes or behaviors we need to stop? Let's start with the processes. And people write them down and go, let's stick them up. And everyone goes and sticks those up on a chart. So it could be whether it's an A4 or, sorry, a big flip chart or on part of the whiteboard. When we do this, we often have a 4 meter long, very, very long, 12-foot kind of long chart there, and people stick them up. And then we go, okay, what about the behaviors that we need to stop? And the beauty of everyone having their own post-it notes is that it's being led as an inclusive activity rather than, again, I'm the boss telling you this is what we need to change. And then once we've got all of those things down, we can look at them. Okay, are there any overlaps? We might need a little bit more of an explanation. We might need to sort of sort them a bit. But then as a group, as our whole team, we've just worked out all of the things we need to stop from a behavioral, a logistical, and a procedural sort of approach. Perfect. So then we can say, well, if they're the things that we need to stop, what are the activities or the processes that we need to continue? So for those who are not watching, I'm drawing another column now, or you can imagine another flip chart. And we would grab our post-it notes and go, hey, for what we did in that last project 6 months ago, that works really well. And we're going to write that down. And again, we can go through the different areas from a behavioral perspective. What behaviors do we need to continue? What processes should continue? And what activities should continue? Again, then we got them down. Everyone sticks their post-it notes up. We look at them, we sort them out, and we work together as a collective. And then, well, next one obviously is, what do we need to start? So this is, in order for us to get this great result in 6 months' time, what might be some new processes we need to start? What are some activities we need to start? And what are some new behaviors that we might need to bring in it? And why this is so important is that when we say to someone, oh, Rolly, you're going to need to start to do this and this, unless we are stopping something, we're not going to have the time to start something new.
Right.
We've got a bucket with so much time and space available, and we have to remove or replace some of those things. That's why we need to have some of the start things. And so when we start with what we need to stop, people feel like, oh, I've got some space. Yeah, oh, we're doing really good stuff. It's reinforcing from a positive perspective. And then, okay, I can see why we need to start these things, and I've got room for them because I've dropped a few of those different areas. So that's a very inclusive activity that we can use for whether it's a project that we need to change our approach, or it's an embracing. And what this kind of does is it relates then to a topic you're probably very familiar with, something called inclusive leadership. And
Mhm.
for those listening today, if you're not familiar with inclusive leadership, the concept is that every person has a different concept of what leadership means. So, Rolly, what leadership means to you could be quite different to what leadership means to me. One, because I've run my own company for well close to over 2 decades now, whereas you've been working in big corporate companies around the world. Someone else leadership might be, and our leadership is defined by our life experiences, our work experiences, our mentors, our peers, and the sort. So if we want to get more inclusivity and more buy-in, so we don't get this pushback about change, we could ask something like, okay, so Rolly, I'm curious, what does change mean to you? Or what does leadership mean to you? And you might go, well, leadership means this, this, and this. And I go, oh, wow, hey, that's really, really, really insightful, because I never thought that, that leadership meant those things to you. Let me share what leadership means to me, and I can talk about those different areas there. The great thing about this inclusive word, you can put anything after the word inclusive. Inclusive innovation.
Right.
Hey, Rolly, what does innovation mean to you? Oh, it means that. Well, innovation to me means this. Or could be, let's say, inclusive customer service. Rolly, what does great customer service mean to you? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, to me, it means this, this, and this. And if
Right.
you go around and ask each of your individuals uh, separately or as a group and share, then you have finally, they go, oh, I know what that crazy Nils guy's thinking. And I also know what Rolly's thinking. And we're on the same page, even though we might have different preferences. We can use that same thing. What does change mean to you? Or what does strategy mean to you? Or what does AI mean to you? And we can have that conversation. So coming back to this component of co-delegation, what we can do is, let's say we've got this project and we're going, okay, we've got to get this done in the next 6 months. We can ask people, so, okay, what team, what do you think would be some of our key activities that we're going to need to do in the first 6 weeks of this 6 months to start to get this project done? Grab your post-it notes. Let's write those things out there. So again, rather than the leader or myself saying this is the plan, we're co-delegating, we're working those components out. We could then go, okay, so we've got a bit of an outline or some idea of some of those activities. What might be some of the obstacles or challenges that we're likely to face in those first 6 months? Let's write them down. Okay, if we were to come across them, what would be the most obvious way that we could overcome those obstacles? I'm just going to do a timeout. What that means from a psychological perspective, they call this if this, then that planning. I know
Mm-hmm.
it sounds very, but
Right.
the reason, and I think there was an amazing psychologist from Columbia University.
Mm-hmm.
She used to be a professor there, Dr. Heidi Halverson Grant. I think she's sort of now in the corporate world, but she was one of the world's leading motivational scientists. And she wrote a great book. I think it might have been Nine Things That Successful People Do Differently. And
Mm-hmm.
one of them was around this concept of if this, then that planning, because it means that we're going along, we hit an obstacle. Most of the time we stop and we go, oh, we freak out and we waste a day, waste a week, and then we finally work it out and we go through. But very successful people, whether they're leaders or not, will always have almost a contingency plan of like, well, if that happens, I'm going to do these things while we're waiting for that to resolve, or we're going to go out and talk to these people. So there's always a loop, a kind of a way to catapult yourself over those different areas. So by asking our team, hey, what do you think might be the most foreseeable obstacles we're going to have in the next 6 weeks as we start to roll out this project? They're already being aware of it. They're thinking about those solutions. And then finally, getting to the point, sorry about the lengthiness of it, we can then go to using, I call it an old school model. And I still find it probably one of the most effective delegation tools or co-delegation tools that we can use, which is the old Rasky model, which is
Right.
yeah, RASCI. Who's going to be responsible? Who needs to approve it? Who's going to support? Who is going to, do we need to consult or ask about different things? And who do we need to inform or just keep up to date? And so by having something like this, we can just say what these six, let's say there's 6 activities for the next 6 weeks that we need to do, and we can go through them. Or, first part for week one, we can go, okay, so who's going to be responsible for that? And we do that as a team. Oh yeah, I think Rolly would be good in that. I can support on it. I'll put my name there. Nils will put Rolly there, and we'll have Anna over here. She's going to approve, and so on. So we can actually do that
Right.
activity together. Like who's to say, why does the leader have to be the one, because then some poor sod goes, I don't want to be, so when we do that, we get buy-in. um
Exactly.
so that's when we have a change project or something. Again, it's we're working out what this project is. We're working out who's going to be doing what in the most effective ways. And some people might think, oh my God, the leader will end up being told that they've got to do all the work. No, they're not. People are like, okay, she needs to do some work. She's going to be doing meetings with decision makers. She's going to have to inform X, Y, and Z. And it kind of makes all that sort of sense there. So that's one of the ways that we can use this technique we call codependence to help create inclusivity. The biggest thing with the fear of change is usually the unknown, and that they're not involved. They've got no say in what's going on in the future. So when we do these inclusive activities, people go, "Oh, I'm a part of this strategic decision more than anyone else." So let me give you an example of this one. I Many years ago, I got called in. I think I was doing a bit of, always do a bit of facilitation for teams and organizations. And it seemed like it was last minute. They said, can you do this, facilitate a meeting for us next week? And I went, okay. And they said, well, what's it about? Oh, there's a bit of a strategy session, and, we've got to make some changes in the business. I thought, sure. And they were the management were very, very poor at telling me what was going on. I turn up, and on the day there's like 200 people in this audience, and most of them are like salespeople and everything else. And they're just saying, look, so what we need you to do is, there's been a really big shift in the marketplace, and we're going to have to make some redundancies.
Oh,
And think I'm going to be the bad person telling them that
right.
these are redundancies. I thought, no way, and I thought about this, and I thought, I don't care if I don't get paid. I thought, this is why, why do we have to, sack all these people? So what I said to them is, I didn't say it to the leader. I just got up on stage and I said, guys, I'm sure we are all aware of what the market conditions are right. Not good. I mean, who's with me? Who's a little bit worried about this right now? And probably right now, a lot of us are going through our minds like, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be made redundant? And if you're going through this, I totally know this would be absolutely horrible. But here's the thing, we could make a choice. Sure, we could say, okay, 20 of you have to go, or we could choose to work together to look at a way that we could maybe solve this problem. Maybe, and I don't know what the answer is, but maybe we have to go, let's reduce from a full-time job to 3.5 or 4 days a week. Maybe we do some rolling part-time thing, because I think all of us would love to continue working, but the conditions mean this. How do we change that? So let's have a bit of a think about it. Anyway, so I go on, and in the end, as I was doing that, at first you could see the CEO on the side of the stage looking at me like, like doing this
Right.
and that. Then then, and I don't care, this is more important, these people's welfare, and we could save the company and save people's jobs. And as they started to share their ideas, the kind of CEO kind of finally came out from the side and started listening and said, oh, tell us more, Rolly, or tell us more, Lisa, because they just hadn't thought of that way. They thought that, the only way to do it was to sack people, to fire them. And when we shift to a collaborative, let's solve this problem together, that people are more innovative. And at the end of the day, they didn't need to sack people. Some people
Wow.
took salaries. I'm happy just to work 3 days a week for the next couple of months because I'm working on doing an extension on my house, or we're getting a pool built,
Right.
or and yeah, and that's the power of kind of shifting things around there, and the fear of change actually doesn't have to be as bad as you might think it is. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Niels. I wish we had more time, but I hope we can talk again soon. And something that I really learned today, if there's one thing I really learned today, is about that narrative in your mind. I think if you treat things logically, as what how you mentioned, and creatively, then we can work this out, especially that last example that you did. So thank you so much, Niels, and I hope I can attend your workshop again face to face, wherever that is. And God bless, Niels. Regards.
Oh, thank you so much, Rolly. And yeah, to all of your listeners out there today, or viewers, leadership is not something that you're born with. It's a learned skill, and
Right.
anyone can learn to become a great leader and to go through massive changes. And I think the more authentic you are, the more inclusive you are, and the clearer you are about that, you're going to get some amazing results. So thanks
Love
for
that.
watching.
Thank you so much.